Welcome to one of the last sessions for this year's SOLIDWORKS World. I'm sure you guys have got a lot of information. I'm going to try and give you some more. I'll try to keep it somewhat entertaining because you're probably getting spent with all the information you've gotten so far. But we'll get started here with sharing assemblies without giving it away. If you want the short answer to the presentation, it's not easy, right? Which you probably already know, which is probably why you're here. So the presentation explains how we're going to deal with the issues of trying to share the stuff without giving it away. My name's Jim Krivoshein. I'm a tech guy for a reseller out of Central USA, headquartered in Chicago. Been doing SOLIDWORKS training and support and consulting and you name it with SOLIDWORKS for about the last 14 years. So doesn't mean I know it all. You come here, you can't even take it all in. But I have a lot of fun with the software, like I'm sure you do too. So that's what makes it worthwhile. So we'll get started here. First thing we're going to look at is our agenda, the outline kind of stuff. We're going to cover the who, what, when, where, why stuff of sharing assemblies without giving it all away. We'll also look at the how. That'll be the bigger piece of the presentation. Methods of sharing, because there's more than one way to do it. And as I said, there's no easy solution. So we'll look at pack and go and maybe eDrawings, neutral file formats. There are several. We'll also look at saving the assembly as a part. Another method, a little more maybe less obvious, insert, new part, and join. Also speed pack, which when I first created this presentation for a previous SOLIDWORKS World, I was pretty excited about speed pack. As I updated it for this year, I became less thrilled with speed pack. So maybe I should send this presentation over to the guys out here that are taking enhancement requests. Defeature, which is an interesting solution we'll take a look at as well. And then we'll compare the results of these different methods. So of the 5 W's, who is first up. Who's involved with sharing? First, designers and engineers who use your product in their design. If you make some sort of componentry or turnkey system that is a subsystem, which there's a lot of stuff out there that's done that way, the designers and engineers who use your product are definitely interested in you sharing. If you're a designer, if you've modeled some stuff, you probably come across something you wanted to add to your assembly and you went looking for it, and odds are you didn't find all the pieces you were hoping for. So you probably had to decide how much effort you were going to put into modeling what was missing, because you don't find what you're looking for off of their sites sometimes. So those engineers are going to use your components. They're interested in the sharing. You who sell and make those things should also be, because of your need to market and sell your product. So have you ever thought of sharing your product but chose not to because of fear of sharing too much? That's usually the big reason or big hurdle why people aren't sharing, is they don't know how to do it. They're afraid of sharing too much. I've worked with some of our customers, working with other customers of ours to try and reuse data. And I'm working with one customer and they're using some component. It would happen to be a sliding door kind of thing. It goes up and down on a fire truck. One of my other customers makes them, and I knew they made them. I knew they used SOLIDWORKS, and I wrongly assumed that they'd make them available on their website. So I'm telling this guy here, oh yeah, well you can just go download those. You know, they use SOLIDWORKS. I was very embarrassed when I found out that they didn't make them available. It took some communication. You have to get past the first people on the phone to get into engineering, to get a hold of somebody who's like, who are you? You want what? Oh, we look at our system. Oh yeah, you guys buy all kinds of our stuff. Sure, we'll send you the whole thing. Oh, that's kind of overkill. So we're afraid of sharing too much unless it's somebody we know as a customer already. But this is a real and daily occurrence. It's serious because there's a lot of opportunities to be had or missed. Okay, and of course, the big one everyone's concerned with is competitive copying. So what are we looking at to share? What information is important? Metadata, things like part number, description, specifications, and we can pretty much get a lot of that stuff out of a PDF file. So that's not too hard. We're already doing that part of the sharing. The next is the volume or the shape of the geometry. That's a big one. Position, configurations, it'd be nice for the range of motion in the case of a sliding door for a fire truck. Sometimes we want to show the fire truck with the doors closed. Sometimes we want to see them with them open. So, you know, 2 positions is kind of handy. Mass properties. We do a lot of engineering stuff with our products. We figure out how heavy things are, where the center of mass is, that sort of thing. If you're going to put that componentry into your design, it would be nice to know how that affects things. Motion. There's a lot of things in the world that move around. If we could actually see that range of motion, we might be concerned about collision with certain things. So being able to see motion would be helpful. And then, of course, what always happens, change. I think it was Benjamin Franklin said there's 2 things in life that are certain, death and taxes. I think all of us here at this convention can say this is number 3. Change is going to happen because we live in that world all the time. So how do we, dealing with those changes? Anybody who's involved with any sort of internal combustion engine, there's a lot of emission standards and evolutions of those emission standards. Trying to use a particular manufacturer's engine system in your product because you use whatever the customer wants. If you buy it from company A or company B and you stick it into your system and you deliver the whole turnkey unit as a completed assembly kind of thing, but to get their engine, whether it's from Caterpillar or somebody else, well, you got their models to deal with, and as they go through evolutionary changes on the environmental stuff, how do you deal with that? Well, that's where the changes come in. That's kind of a big one. When and where really kind of go together. Will recipients use your or our data? Okay. Component proximity, section views, looking to see where things fit, basically. Just visual kind of stuff. How close do things come together? Are they interfering kind of thing? Which is the next button there. Interference detection, sort of in a static position. Are things going to fit okay? Collision detection, if we could do dynamic motion, maybe the item that we're trying to insert has some motion and we want to replicate that, or we need some other stuff in our design to move around what we're inserting, we're trying to share. We might need to do some collision detection and look for that. Total weight of what our assembly is going to be with the stuff we're adding to it, as well as the weight of the component we're adding in its center of mass. But a lot of times we're also trying to make product images. So, you know, this is a pretty picture. And sometimes, you know, what we make in engineering gets carried over to sales and marketing. And sometimes they'll accept just the CAD file shaded. Sometimes you got to turn on real view and show the reflections. And maybe you turn on that, what's the other one besides real view that's in there? No, not the photo view. It's no. What? Not the shadow. The shadow is real view, and then there's ambient occlusion. Thank you. You got all of the answers here. Excellent. Yeah, I turned it on for the presentation because it makes it look sexy. So sharing assemblies again without giving away. Why wouldn't you want to share? Why not? Well, it's pretty obvious. We kind of covered this already, but it's kind of a repeat because it's a big issue. Have you ever thought of sharing your product but chose not to because of fear of sharing too much? And this happens every day in every industry. So the why is really the big hurdle. But why wouldn't you share? If we look at the positives, the benefits of sharing your data, assuming it is something that somebody else would use in their designs. Market awareness. To be recognized by your potential customers, it'd be nice if you shared your stuff so they could see it and find it and be made aware of it. Engineers can then test fit, form, and function with your component or your subsystem. Minimize repeated effort. That's a big one for me. I hate doing things that have already been done before. You know somebody's already engineered and drawn up this little pedestal podium thing. Why do I want to redraw it? Just because I'm trying to do some layout work? No, I want to find something. Right. Speed confirms selection. Everybody in here has got project deadlines. You want to get them done faster, so if you can get somebody's models, that would certainly help. We're trying to complete the design, and without it, you're kind of left with not complete engineering data. How heavy is it? Where's the center of mass? The basic things. Okay? And this is going to build relationships between you and your customers, which should, quite obviously, then drive the sales. Okay? But like my little pile of stones here, we got to balance this out. So over here on the negative side, we do have some risks. Okay? Loss of proprietary information if you give away too much. Don't want to do that. You could lose your competitive advantage when you give away that proprietary information. Your competitors, known and unknown, might get a hold of it, which aids in their knockoff efforts. Maybe you've got patents, but they got a good bit of data on your product. They can work around it maybe. We don't need to make that any easier for them. Your customers may source elsewhere. Laws only go so far, and then there's different country boundaries and whatnot. So, but then we also have the issue of managing the data. If we're going to engineer our own product, and we're going to create our own file system, we're going to manage that, and we've seen a lot of different presentations that ways of handling that with products like Enterprise, PDM, or whatever. Now, if you're going to work with other files that you're going to share, how many more do you have to deal with? Okay? And what kind of efforts does that take to maintain? So targets for my presentation here, there are a lot of different aspects to take on this sharing assemblies topic. It sometimes gets me spinning my wheels here trying to figure out how to make this an intelligent presentation without knowing what the targets are. So there's a lot of different perspectives to take. The one I'm taking here, we're looking at sort of you, the engineers, wanting to use this data, why you want your suppliers to share the data, because we want to have the volume and the shape. We want to be able to do section views, see how things work, look at position and configuration information, mass properties type stuff, interference detection, motion, updates and changes. We want to be aware of what kind of efforts there are for that. Collision detection, and we do want to make decent images. So those were my targets for this presentation. And there's a few other things that kind of outside of this presentation, but this is the focus for now. This was the model set that I used for testing these different methods that we're going to get into in a minute. This is the Helmatro spreader that you've probably seen. It's been here at SOLIDWORKS World for several years, and SOLIDWORKS is using a lot of that imagery. So the big question is how. These 6 methods are the ones we're going to talk about. Pack and go with eDrawings, neutral file format, saving assembly as a part, insert new part and join, speed pack, and Defeature. So let's get into it. Pack and go with eDrawings. Pretty much everybody's probably aware of this, that either through the icon or through the file menu, you can save your assembly with pack and go, and you get this really great big long list. You can save it to a folder, you can save it to a zip file. When you go to share that, there are some benefits. You do have the volume and shape. You have the section view capability, position and configurations to a degree when you're dealing with eDrawings. Since this is pack and go, this is SOLIDWORKS native files. If somebody gets a hold of SOLIDWORKS, they can do a little bit more with that. Mass properties, center mass, that actually carries through to eDrawings. The center mass does. Mass properties, not so much from what I found, right? At least in eDrawings. Images, since you have the full data, you can make some pretty decent pictures out of it. On the negative side, mass properties didn't come across completely. Motion, not so much. If you've got an exploded view, well, you can animate that, but that's about it. Updates and changes, you got the native data, so you can replace individual files fairly well, but you have to replace those and manage them. So, I don't know, the updates and changes sometimes I can't really decide which side to put it in, but collision detection, with eDrawings, we're not going to be able to really do that. But the big one here is that you're giving it away, which is why we shouldn't even have this one in the slide, okay? But everybody knows how to do this pack and go because they're moving stuff back and forth amongst their coworkers, mobile computers and stuff like that. So we're using pack and go a lot. You might spin your design from one variation for one adaptation for one customer's location versus another. So a lot of times people will use pack and go, but this is kind of a big no-no if you're trying to share your information without giving it away. So the real stuff here comes next. Neutral file formats. Probably everybody's worked with some of these different file types, whether it be Parasolid, Step, IGIS. Those have been around for IGIS, from the very beginning, I guess. A6 SAT files. There are some options both on the export and the import of these files that you can kind of play with. There are some vintages of IGIS and Step to be considered. So when you go and do, say, a Save As, you can change the file type here. In the Save As dialog window, if you set the type, the Options button will come up where you can then deal with those either export or import options. When you're importing, if you set the file type to all and you select the file, I know it never used to give you that option. I think that might have changed though. But if you don't see the Options button, definitely set it to the Save As type. And then when you get in there, you'll get a list of options where you might consider changing some things depending on how well that might translate. Here is the results of my using the export method of Parasolid. So we have the original geometry on the right, and we have the resulting import back into SOLIDWORKS on the left. And if we're concerned about the imagery, how good does it look? Because we want to make some marketing literature for our product with what we've downloaded off of the web. That's not bad, but you see there's no decals, and there's some face colors that seem a little off. So let's take a look at the trade-offs. On the positive side, we have volume and shape, done very well. We can section view this real easy. Interference detection in a static state. It's going to work. Imagery again, about 60%. I don't know, I just threw a number at it. Sounded good, it's better than 50%. Because then I wouldn't know where to put it. On the negative side though, positions and configurations, you're only going to get one. Otherwise you got to do a whole nother model set type export. So mass properties did not come across. This comes all in as individual parts or bodies, and they don't have any of that material information coming across. There's no motion, there's no mates, updates and changes. Yeah, it's a lot of different either files or bodies to deal with when a change comes. So sounds like a bit of messing around. No collision detection, which gets the pile of stones kind of flipped around, where this is maybe more negative items than positive. Another method, save an assembly as a part. How many people have tried this? Oh wow, everybody. That's awesome. Maybe for the one or two people who didn't raise their hand because they're tired of raising their hand in these kind of things, I'll show the video here anyway. If I can select that. There we go. So from the file menu, we do a save as. There are a few options when you change the file type from assembly to part. We can see that there's exterior faces, there's exterior components, and all components. If you've experimented with this, which it seems like most of you have, my first go around with this video here is going to show exterior components being saved to see what that looks like. What you find out very quickly is what you consider to be exterior components and what SOLIDWORKS sees as external components, not the same. So you usually end up with something a little less desirable in that regard. So I went back and, let's see, where were we at in the video here? I closed it. Here I'm going to open up the part file now. That is that assembly. To take a look at it. Imagery initially comes in kind of messed up. Oh, and I shouldn't have hit that. Dang it, now I killed my video. All right, since most of you saw it, I'll just explain the rest of it. Imagery came in a little messed up at first, but a control Q, good kick in the pants, straightened it out. But there was way too many items in there that I didn't want to share because of external components. It's more like if you took your product and submerged it in water, what would it touch? What would the water touch? Every one of those parts that gets wet is what gets selected for exterior. So if you've got a small pin in a large hole, when the water can get around it, it's going to grab everything inside, which kind of stinks. So the other method that I used in the video was to take the assembly, create a configuration where I'm selecting components to be suppressed that I don't want to be exported. So I'm manually getting involved, spending some time with it, but I'm building a configuration so that I can export all parts that are not suppressed into the part file to make a better solution. The results here, graphically, looked a lot cleaner. I'm pretty happy with the imagery there. If we look at the trade-offs here, Benefits-wise, we got the volume and shape again, section view capability, even though it's a multi-body part. Interference detection, again, static state stuff. Image stuff looked like it was closer to 100%, just maybe the decal stuff. Negative side, position and configurations. Again, you're saving a single file with one configuration. Mass properties does not come across. Kind of surprised me. No motion. Updates and changes, you got to go back through this. If you make the configuration like I did, which worked better, at least I don't have to do so much effort. It's just a save as, but there's some other options with maybe some better tools. So collision detection, again, not so much. So a little bit more on the negative side maybe than positive. Insert new part join. How many people have tried this? Excellent. So something new for you. So it was worth coming here maybe. That was the point, right? So insert new part. Oh, let's back up. Let's show the video because I think I like this mouse better here. Oh, now it doesn't want to work. There we go. All right, so how do we do this? You take your assembly and you insert a new part. This is more like in top-down design type thing. When you do insert new part, you have to select a face and tell it how you want to locate that part, and then it goes into sketch mode. You exit sketch mode, and then you go to insert features, join. And you select the parts that you're willing to share, which is what I'm doing here. And it's adding them to the list. It's going to insert those parts into my new part. So I'm going to have a duplication in the assembly here. Okay? So I'm just picking everything I'm kind of concerned with. So the screw heads, because if somebody's making, a cabinet or a drawer or a case to carry this thing, those might be kind of concerning, but I left the washers off because I didn't care about those, and I'm not picking anything from the inside because we really wouldn't care or want to share any of that. Okay, so I'm selecting all these parts to be joined, anything that looks cool and helpful to make good imagery as well. And when we pick OK, oh, it will also hide parts if you don't turn off that option. That's kind of hard to see there. But exit part mode, okay, now you can see there's some stuff on top of stuff going on there. So I'm renaming this part. Initially, it's a virtual part, exists only in the assembly. I'll then go out and save it as its own file. Save part, and we'll put it in a different location. So right now you're seeing a part that is a duplication of most of the parts in the assembly, but it's a single part file. It's creating the in-context relationship. There's the external reference marker in the tree behind the part file. And we'll go ahead and open that part up in its own window so you can take a look at it. Here's the feature tree. It just says join, and everything is gray. Part imagery stuff, settings. Back here in the assembly, then you would want to go ahead and suppress that, get it out of your assembly, because otherwise you would have incorrect data in your assembly. Here I'm going to go and make a change to the design. I'm going to go just punch a hole in this part so we can see a change and demonstrate the associativity from not only the part to the assembly like you're used to, but how we can carry that down to the shared part. Okay, so I'll punch a big hole in there. We'll go back to our assembly file. You can see the change there. This item is suppressed right now. I'm going to unsuppress it. That will push the change down into the shared part. And if we open that up in its own window, you can see the big hole. So changes zip right through, okay? At least geometric changes. So you have that linked reference that you can use to update. And since we're suppressing it, we're stopping any of that calculations that you wouldn't need most of the time. I think I'm just putting this back to where it was, so we can stop that. So the resulting file then looked like this. Again, it lost all the color stuff, but it made it all nice, boring gray, I guess. That wasn't too bad. It's better than multicolored stuff, maybe. If we look at the trade-offs, on the benefit side, we got volume and shape like before. Updates and changes, that seems to be a better plus here. We could even show some of that. Section views, certainly going to work. Interference detection for static again. Image, I'd say it's better than half, but that's kind of questionable. I guess you can decide on all of this anyway. Positions and configurations, I'm only going to get the one. But since it is a feature, we could probably do some stuff with configurations to make different variations. Would we get separate configurations in the joined part? I don't know for sure. I'm kind of thinking on the fly here, thinking I should have maybe spent a little more time with this. There's always more to learn, right? Mass properties did not come through. Motion didn't. Collision detection wouldn't work then. So it's a little bit more positive maybe than negative. It's definitely interesting. Speed pack. Oops, giving it away. This one looked horrible. All right, so where's the mouse here? Sometimes this works and sometimes it doesn't. All right, so speed pack. I don't know how many people have tried speed pack. Okay. You go to your configuration manager, you right-click on a configuration and say Add Speed Pack. There is a long list of items here that you can include, whether it be faces or bodies. I usually use the bodies, parts type selection. You can do the quick selection stuff here. Never been real happy with the results of this, but these are the items you're choosing to include body information for in this case. The other items that you do not select will be visually there at most, but they won't be able to touch and measure any of that. So it's kind of an interesting trade-off that you can see everything but share just a few things as far as being able to touch and measure. You see the configuration or the speed pack configuration here. Oh, those videos stink. All right. Can't pause the videos real well running full screen for some reason. So the speed pack configuration looked a little different. The imagery that came across when I loaded it back up by itself, it looked goofy like this. Not really sure why. I think it's kind of a regression with 2015 SP 1.1 at least. The interesting thing about SpeedPack, why I was initially thrilled about it, is it's a derived configuration of whatever config you choose to make the SpeedPack from. So anything you do with your normal configuration, maybe it's just default, is automatically going to show up in that other configuration. It's not a separate file to manage. It's easy to find and get at. If you take your existing assembly file as is and send it to me, but you don't give me any of the reference parts, most of the time you send somebody an assembly, they open it up and it says, cannot find. Do you want to do it? Nope, nope, nope. You get nothing. If there's a SpeedPack configuration in there and it's saved in the SpeedPack configuration, when you open it up without any of the references, you can still see and work with that. You can stick it in another assembly and you can mate to it. Question?
We just sent an assembly to someone in our bar.
Uh-huh.
He had a bunch of questions, but he was looking for more parts. If I send him the speed pack of it, it'll just, is it like, it embeds the part in the assembly?
It doesn't embed the part. It does like a 3D screenshot. You know how you can like print screen or whatever? It does that three-dimensional, kind of like what eDrawings does. It gives us just that model display data. And then depending on which items you chose, it'll actually give you the ability to work with it. And if you didn't specifically select either the face or the body, you can see it. And normally when you put your cursor over it, you get this kind of cataract effect where it hides things, you can't see it. You can turn that on and off because a lot of people hate it. But you can only work with the things that were chosen to be selected. Now, if you were sending something to me and you wanted me to help you on something because you were having technical difficulties, I would not want your speed pack because I want to dig into the source data and figure out where it's really coming from, and it's probably not enough.
So you can click and move things?
Move things? No, not so much. We got to get to the trade-offs here.
Just lock in space.
Yeah, for the most part. Question?
On your trade-offs on your list, whether it keeps or not mass properties, does that include the materials?
No. What you'll see is there's pretty much shortcomings across the board, and material being one of them.
Materials almost never goes.
Not that I've seen. So.
You said you could only select the items you select, you pick the feedback, and you do surfaces?
Yes, the top block that was in the video in the property manager was for individual surfaces, which one of the other trade-offs or uses for SpeedPack is for yourself at your company for mating purposes. If you want to take this assembly and stick it into another assembly, a lot of times you got a lot of parts there, a lot of faces and whatnot, and you want to mate, say, to this face and to the bottom face and maybe to a side face. That's all you ever want to pick. And you want consistency against all your other assemblies and how it's done. So whether you do it or he does it, if you save a speed pack with just those faces selected, when he goes to mate it and he's using the speed pack, it takes less memory to load, loads faster. And when he goes to mate it, he can only pick the 3 things he should use anyway. So I was really like gravitating towards speed pack. And you can kind of tell by the way I'm talking, I'm not gravitating there anymore.
When you do that, can you select
Coordinates.
coordinates?
For speed pack, yes, I believe that's the one you can. No.
Or
Coordinates. Reference planes. The video showed that, I think, at the end. You get reference planes, and that's about it. You don't get a feature tree other than the planes in the origin. So I don't think you get the coordinates system. It's the neutral file format. So a lot of times we'll put a coordinate system in that's different, especially if somebody is used to Z being up. You can put your own coordinate system in. When you export it and they import it, they can use that coordinate system instead. So that's where I got a little off track.
Set it up right, because you use that as library ports and routing.
You want to use speed pack configurations and routing?
becomes a mess.
Well, if you're working with routing, you already know it's kind of a tricky product. Have at it. Maybe you make a presentation for next year and tell us how well it went. That would not be my choice for a presentation to do next year. Routing, I was involved with a hands-on a while back, and it was very challenging. So we'll take a look at the trade-offs here. Benefits again, volume and shape. You have the look of it. You don't really have the volume, so to speak. Update changes because it's a derived configuration. It's easy to get at, but you notice that's the end of the positives list. On the negatives, positions and configurations, mask properties, motion, section view, cannot section view speed pack. Big trade-off. Interference detection doesn't work, collision detection doesn't work. Images came across horrible. Had to put a sad face in there. So personally, I don't know if it's just my short experience with 2015 in this particular data set in the short amount of time that I had to work with this, I really feel that SpeedPack seems to have become less than what it used to be. So it seems really interesting. I wish I would have had time to take a look at the knowledge base to see what kind of existing issues are known about this, and maybe some of these are regressions that are being addressed, but couldn't get there just yet. So a whole lot more on the right side here than the left side. Defeature. This is the bigger one. Longer video. I'll try not to mess it up. So Defeature is a feature you find under the Tools menu. It's got a very long property manager. You can select internal components, small components by percentage. Here I'm doing selected components. You pick the parts that you don't want to include. So the selection process here is a little bit more mousing around, if you will, to select things like washers. I'm leaving the nuts behind and the screw heads because, again, overall size dimensions might be helpful in a number of cases with components that we're trying to share. So there's a number of steps or pages to this property manager. Right now I'm just going around selecting a lot of parts, but at the top there's a blue arrow for multiple pages of information that we're going to go through. You can choose some exceptions. So depending on your selection technique, there's a lot of different ways to select the items that you want to not include because, the internal stuff you don't want to show. And I just kind of brute force my way through this trying to pick them graphically. So I must have been feeling tired at the time I was doing this video. All right. And I don't want to touch the keyboard or the mouse because it'll stop playing and I can't have it pick up where we left off. So I'll give it a second here to pick up a couple other parts probably. And then the ambient occlusion keeps flashing in and out. You guys have used that, you know all about that. I probably should have shut that off for the selection process. Would have made things a little easier for me.
Is Defeature only available in Assemblies or part of it?
Both. All right, so next step here, motion. You can create groups to capture motion from an assembly. You select the components. The ones that I'm selecting here, I'm making a group. What I've seen in the past with this, I didn't test it on this one, on the update, capturing that motion is really tricky, but it can be done. Okay. What I did here did not capture the motion properly entirely. Then there's features to keep. Being selected, you can choose additional things you might want to add. You hit the next button and it goes through this removing features information. It's doing some calculating here. We should see it split the screen here shortly. And we should see the before and after effects of Defeature. And now it's looking at items to remove, maybe some additional items you want to get rid of. So maybe there's a little too much detail on the right here with these extra holes. Don't really need that. Shaded triangles and all for video cards. I want to simplify that. I'm selecting faces that are going to be removed. You can go and select an individual feature, like these holes. These happen to be patterned. And I think if I remember right, I grab the feature and it grabs 3 of the 4 because I didn't grab the seed kind of thing. So I have to grab the other one. And then some oddball stuff on the end, maybe the little cable thing there. We don't need a little retainer clip. I think I went deep down in here. We can even remove the screw head stuff. You probably don't really care about seeing that. And again, with shaded triangles, every little bit you do can take stuff out. So then you update it again. You can see how it kind of simplifies this stuff. And you can go back and forth and tweak this a bunch. What's nice is this going to end up saving this as a feature in the tree, so you can edit this if you get tired and you get frustrated with the success you're getting and you want to come back to it later. It's really nice that it saves that for us. So, so here we can see the results. It's got that screw head removed. Now you can just save the settings for future use, or you can also save the model as a separate file, and you can choose whether you want that to be linked or not. So you have those options. Oh, I can see I got that one extra hole in there that I didn't want. So back it up, select the face, save the feature, step it forward, let it reprocess. I need to work on my video linking stuff here so I can fast forward through this. Speed it up for you. This should be the last edit though. All right, so there's the save options, whether you want to save it out as a separate model, link to the original, or just store the settings. Either way, it'll store the settings when you hit the green check mark. Don't hit the red X. So I'm saving this assembly out as a defeatured part. Okay, so it's going to take my assembly and save it as a part for me, but it's got all this detail removed, simplifying the geometry. And if we open that up, oh, there's the feature in the feature tree. Nowhere near the origins, way up at the top. Out of sight, almost out of mind there. But you can come back to that and create a new export file, edit the settings as well. So I saved my assembly with that in there for future use. Here is the defeatured part, much more simplified geometry. And you see a defeatured feature here with the external reference because I linked it. These are all bodies in this part file. So the result image on the left looks pretty decent. So I was pretty happy with that. Trade-offs again, on the positive side, we got volume, shape. We can do section views with it. We got mass properties with a star. Why did I put the star in there? We didn't get true mass properties one-to-one match. But when I did this previously, which I want to say was 2012, the mass properties matched exactly. Center of mass, total weight, all that sort of stuff. But when I did this one, it did not match when I checked it, and I feel that's a regression. So I put it over here because I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be there. It's supposed to work. But if it doesn't, you got to do at least something to say it might not be right. Interference detection we could do. Motion. Because it can capture motion, I don't show it in the video because I wasn't successful with it. In the 2012 version that I did, the export, I was able to capture that, but it did take a fair amount of trying. You got to want it. Until you kind of understand how the mates are captured and the grouping is done. So, but updates and changes are pretty easy because you're working with your regular assembly. It's got the Defeature item in the tree, and if you make some changes or whatever, you can go to that, step through it again, and export a new file. And if you're not making any other changes other than, oh, this part I added I don't want to include, you could select it to be removed or choose to include it. That's all you really have to do. So it's very easy for the updates. Collision detection then, because we have motion, we could get a hold of that. Image stuff was pretty good. Call it 90%, just missing the maybe the decal stuff. On the negative side, positions, configurations, it's just a one configuration file. So what else are we missing? It's a bit more of a detailed setup. That's probably its only negative that I think. It takes a bit more to get through it, especially if there's motion you want to capture, but the results are pretty decent. So a lot more on the positive side. So comparison-wise, we don't want to use pack and go. A little reminder there. Neutral file format was a little more negative than positive. Save assembly as a part, again, a little more negative than positive. Insert new part join, which seems like it might have been new to more people, was a little bit more positive than negative. So something you might want to consider. Sure. Well, it shouldn't be as big as the entire assembly and reference components because you're only choosing the items you want. But because you're inserting the part, we pretty much got everything, unless you've used part configurations where you maybe have a simplified part versus a full detail. You know, if you're not doing that, it's going to be a one-to-one for everything you include. So I guess it's kind of based on that. Speed pack. I probably should have turned this with the stones way down here because it was more negative than anything else, at least with my results recently. So not to say you can't try this yourself and prove me wrong. I'd be happy to be shown something that I didn't experience and how I did it wrong maybe. But Defeature, definitely more positive than negative and most positive of all the options. So if I was to make a recommendation on where to start trying to share assemblies without giving it all away, I would start with Defeature.
I have a quick question. You know, I do Defeature. If you notice, when you do that, the body's file names are retain some of the original part numbers.
Okay.
And we've had issues where this gets sent out, and like they give it away, the customer can see our part numbers. They
Oh.
all try to order parts that we don't want them to order or not order, and it's causes customer confusion. So I'll take the Defeature and rename it, save it as part file, and dummy it way down.
Uh-huh. Okay.
I don't know.
You're right. I didn't notice. I mean, I noticed that there were file names in there. I didn't consider it because the files they gave us were named by description, which is a bad habit that the training material also starts you out with in Essentials. But good point. We don't want the individual file names, especially the part numbers, showing up in the Defeature. So that is a bit of a drawback. But you notice with my little trade-offs there, I only had like 9 items, and that wasn't one of them. So no worries for me. But in the real world, yes. And that's where we should submit an enhancement request to consider that sort of stuff. Otherwise, they'll never know. And the fact that there's these different types for doing this, to me, kind of screams, hey, you need to come up with a good way. And if it's going to be this one, because it seems like they've done the most development in there, then, you know, that's the place to submit the enhancement request for, probably. Was there?
The other thing I've noticed, Speed Pack doesn't work. I know I'm probably not the only one that shares with people who don't use SOLIDWORks or vice versa. If they import it, or if they export to a Parasolid or something like that, all your Speed Pack information goes away.
Yes.
Because I ran into that, this was actually a customer using SOLIDWORks, but an older or newer version. I think it was a newer
Oh,
version
okay.
than we did.
So they're trying to go backward?
Yeah, and when they sent us the file, we import it, anything that was Speed Pack was gone.
Yes. I should have had that as a caveat on the slide for the speed pack that doesn't work with anything but SOLIDWORKS or that current version or forward. So if you're trying to go into other systems, pick a modeling system, that's not going to work at all. Good point. Thanks for bringing it up. So if you're trying to go to other systems, even more negative on that one. I'm really starting to feel like a hater, but it feels justified. So that's really the end of the presentation. My company, CATI, Inflow, are really two companies. These are all the presentations our people put on this year. Our website, cati.com, is going to have all those, and obviously we're giving them the SOLIDWORKS to upload so you can get at these as well. So that's all, unless you got more questions. Thank you.
I got a question about the saving to different versions.
Okay.
Why doesn't SOLIDWORKS ever go to a save down a year? Because a lot of other software companies like Adobe does all their,
Okay.
all their 3D, all their 2D products.
Excellent question. We get that a lot. Why doesn't SOLIDWORKS allow us to save down old versions? It does.
But you can't get any, like you can go, well, actually, let's see.
The way it saves backwards is if you're in say you're in 2014, any version, 2013 Service Pack 5 would open up a 2014 file, and it would give you a fair amount of functionality, but not 100%. It does not work with 2014 Service Pack 5 opening to 2015, because in 2015 they restructured the data structure in the files for 2015 to make it smaller and faster, and that's why it can't go backward. Now the main reason we can't say back to say 2010, because somebody might still be on that. Over the years, SOLIDWORKS has created new features. So, and they're geometric, okay? If you look at like AutoCAD, you can save back, we can use DraftSight and save it way back. But that's because they defined the line, the arc, the circle, the polyline, etc. back in the 80s. And they've never given you anything new other than interface to manipulate it. So you can save it back because the fundamental building blocks are the same. Over the years in SOLIDWORKS, the last 20, they've added thousands of features that if we save back, they'd have to strip out, which is what Excel will do. If you take an Excel function that's new and you save it as an old version of the Excel file, you can do it. You can save it back a good ways. When you open it up there, it'll have the correct value, but it's static. It won't do the math anymore. So imagine I'll give you the parts, but I'll strip a few things out just randomly, and you won't know which ones they are until you try to compare it. Nobody wants that. And that's just going to be fundamental across the board with solid modeling, because you're going to add new descriptions and there's no way to really define it, short of going through a neutral file format.
But the thing is, like, let's just use as a bad example Microsoft.
Okay.
They have accessibility packages with like older versions of Office you can install to accept newer versions of their programs.
You can install something in an old version of their product to open up new stuff?
So let's say I use like whatever the latest version of Word is, and I have an older version on my laptop.
Okay.
I can install an accessibility pack that allows me to use the newer version.
Really?
It doesn't have all the features.
I should have asked the query how many people knew that. I'm guessing that's pretty...
They did that when they went to XLSX, and now.
Yeah.
Oh,
I've ran into it on going from 2010 to 2007. Like you said, Excel. Functions that existed in 2010 don't exist.
yeah.
And it'll just come up with an error. It'll just say error.
Okay.
Basically, function can't define or whatever.
Yeah.
It'll tell you when you say, and that one is a pain because there's no file type. It doesn't tell you that you'll lose that functionality.
Okay.
You just kind of have to figure it out.
Wing it. See what happens.
Save it as the old XLX, just a regular one,
Mhm.
XLS. It would say, you're going to lose some functionality in like 42 places.
Yeah.
And here's a list of all the 42 places you're going to lose it. Some of them were stupid formatting things, so no one cared.
Mhm.
But yeah, I noticed in 2010, they really at Excel did away with some of the old functions and just maybe split one function into 2 or 3 functions.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
You want to be able to get into any random feature and tweak it, change it, and that's requires full fidelity through the translation. And the hurdles are features didn't exist back then. So, if they could sort of make that a dumb chunk and say, well, you just can't edit it, that would maybe kind of like get you 70% of the way, but it doesn't look like they're even going to bother because it would just tick people off anyway. So, but
So you had said, neutral file format save.
Mhm.
I've noticed that we'll save something as an STL or something like that, and if it's an assembly, the model tree is still in there.
Mhm.
How do we protect our information as sending it out as a step or an STL or step file?
you could round trip it, so you export it, and then you import it back in, and you've got the tree, and it's a mess, and you could combine those bodies and then send it back out a second time to kind of filter that even further.
Because we don't have a best practice in our company, and that's what I'm looking to establish, because a lot of the times we have a customer, they request a 3D, they don't even know what they're asking for. We send them a 3D, which is a step file with the full model tree, that's our whole product. And it's a huge file, first off, and it's also the whole model tree. So I'm interested in the defeature function. So maybe what I would do is defeature and then save it as a step file. Would that give me that same? Right, because we have fairly simple sheet metal.
Yep.
That's how we do it. The other thing you can do is labor intensive, but the one thing about the middle files,
Neutral file?
Neutral file, thank you, is with about half a dozen of them, you can use Task Scheduler to automate it and let it do tons of them. But yeah, what we do is I'll do 2 task schedules. I'll do one to go in and save all these assemblies as a part and generate a whole bunch of parts, which blows away your tree. And then I'll do a second task scheduler on that file to go in and convert them to step, because we found certain types work better. Because I'm constantly ensuring with software that's not SolidWorks. We deal with architectural companies. And I found like SAT seems to work better with Inventor, and this software works better with that and that. So we have 10 different file formats. So when someone asks me that, send 3D. First email, I respond to the email saying, what file type do you want?
Yeah.
Because I have like 10 different types. But that's the best and quickest way I've found is use Task Scheduler to generate different sets of files.
One off, that's my thing. So it's, they'll come in.
They're not linked. You don't get that nice link part.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is, so what we need to do is we generate live because something uprevs on us, right? And then we don't want to send the customer an overrev product. We need to send them. So that means it tasks me to go in there, open the model, and save it as that one file. We don't store those because they're not ready. So because we don't have a best practice. But if we establish a best practice,
Yeah. But yeah, you can get rid of your tree just by saving this part and then saving your file format too. That's quick and easy. It's a lot quicker than you need. Depending on how many parts you do. We send out, I have a package of parts. We do like a modular conveyor system, so I have to send out this package to engineering companies. And that's where I could have someone sit there and defeature it for 2 weeks, all the components, or I can just let Task Scheduler do it over a weekend and not have to pay for anybody to do it. So that's one of the reasons I went the Task Scheduler route. It's not.
Are you guys on the My SolidWorks site?
Yes.
I wonder if there's a forum or a thread or whatever on this sharing challenges, because this discussion you guys are having right here, have that on the My SolidWorks site so SolidWorks employees can read through it and see a lot of the little important pieces to this that wasn't part of my presentation that if we're going to get to a much better solution, should all be considered. And it sounds like it'd be a pretty significant bit of work for them to add everything we need, but they're not going to get started unless they start hearing it, and that'd be a great way to document it.